name's Cath Connelly. I'm currently living in Melbourne, which is in the state of Victoria in Australia, and I've lived in Melbourne for about probably 13 or 14 years now. And I come from the Anglican Church, Anglican tradition, and that's very important to me. I come from, my father's an Anglican minister, and my Anglicanism is important to me. Yeah. But for all that, I find that my ministry and spiritual direction crosses many boundaries, particularly because the community I live in, Belgrave, has many people from alternative communities, particularly New Age people and people from the pagan tradition, and it's many of those people that are entering into conversation with me about exploring their journey, their way of being, and I do love that interfaith connection, and the whole interfaith world is something that's very important to me. Yeah. What I would say is it's definitely not counselling. It's definitely not trying to fix a problem. It's not therapy in any way. How I like to describe it is people coming together to try and find where what I call the spirit might be moving. Where are the movements in the spirit as we just talk about life? If we're going to use God language, it would be, what might God be up to here? I think this phrase that I just said, where is the movement of God in that? That's what I see spiritual direction about, trying to explore that together. And I guess in that way it remains so transformative both for myself and for the directee, because we're perhaps both listening as hard as each other of what might be going on here. So that's not about therapy, it's about the deepest engagement of what really matters to people. And that's pretty privileged work to be doing, it really is. There's a funny little verse hidden in the middle of a book of the Hebrew Scriptures, which some of us call the Old Testament, but the Hebrew Scriptures. It's a funny little verse, and it's hidden in Jeremiah, chapter 6:16. I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this one to you. And it says, and I'm going to not get it right, it says, stand, thus says the Lord. Don't you like it? Thus says the Lord. Stand at the crossroads and look, and ask for the ancient paths, and walk in them, and you will find rest for your soul. Now, I think that thing of standing at the crossroads and stopping to think, what's this about? What is going on? What choices do I have here? What am I being called to that will give me fullness of life? And much of that is the ancient ways that the verse talks about. What is in the tradition? What is in my own lived wisdom? What is in my family, my personal experience that I can bring forth as I stand at the crossroads? And then, and this is partly where learning some gifts of discernment can come in, how do I make a decision to move into life? Yeah, so this little verse hidden in the back of Jeremiah 6:16, it's the one and only verse I know off by heart. I think that's a multi-layered question, because I think that many different traditions are seeking prayer in some way, whether it's through ritual and invoking goddess, invoking gods, through meditation, through contemplation, through ways that aren't perhaps so obviously Christian, which is my own tradition, that people are seeking a way to explore, perhaps to find language for their experience, because I think we keep getting tripped up with the divine, and so many of us don't have someone with whom they can explore that. And I think that's to do with learning a language of saying, you're allowed to go here, you're allowed to explore this sort of thing. And here's someone who has some training in this, who has what I would call a vocation, a sense of being called to this field of work. But someone who is not an authority for all the training, but a fellow companion exploring together. I was with someone who was suffering a chronic illness, and in their great sense of grief and ongoing stress over this, was just asking for some incredibly practical help at that time about how to become centred while waiting for some results of tests. What are some really practical things? And so we actually talked about some tools of meditation there, because that in that time was what was needed. It wasn't the deeply spiritual as such language that other people might need to go to. But at this time of great crisis, of physical crisis, emotional crisis, because the two are so entwined, that this person needed really practical ways of saying that when I'm at home, I'm really stressing out, how can I help provide some tools for this person at that time? So yeah, that's one example where it was really practical stuff. And another person turns up with a dream, what I like to call a God dream, where we all dream all the time, but sometimes you just get a nudge that this one needs to be really looked at. And whilst I'm certainly not a dream analyst, I'm not coming in as the expert except to say, let's explore together what this might be about. And it's not that I sit there as an absolute unskilled person, because spiritual direction takes training, takes commitment to it, it takes regular supervision, and any spiritual director that is really taking it seriously will both have their own spiritual director and also go to regular supervision, because we must. We are in such a privileged role in what we do that we really have to take that seriously and attend to our own business, or else it's a sham. And I think all of us can pick up the sham element very quickly. Yeah. So we're attending to our own business, and when someone comes with whether it's a dream or a chronic illness or a marriage ending or whatever it might be, nothing is not open for discussion, because God is present in all things. Yeah. It's times when decisions have to be made, but we know we really want to, again, move into life. And it's not always easy to know what choice will be the most life-giving for myself, for those I'm in communion with, for the people involved in my life. And perhaps with the skills that come from the tradition, but also with talking it through, where is the life in this? What is God calling me to? How can I move forward in my journey to be life-giving? And that's what discernment's about. And again, I come back to saying there aren't many people you can sit and chat to that about. And so I see spiritual direction as playing that vital role there. It's a funny thing, because I reckon God's a lot bigger than the church. God's so big. God's so big. And we are so lovable and capable. And we have to find what that's about and claim it for ourselves. And for all sorts of reasons, the church has perhaps not honoured that. But God does. God's not going to say no to anyone. God's about life, as I keep saying. So some people really need to hear that, because the church has battered them for who they are. But there's a much bigger picture where no one is separate from God's love. I'm very lucky, very privileged. I don't think the word's luck. I play the harp, and it's a Celtic harp, and to be immersed in the Celtic tradition. Someone asked me, just the other day, what makes my eyes sparkle, and I just found myself talking about playing the harp and talking about Celtic tradition, particularly the Irish tradition in my case, and to have the two come together. I'm so nurtured by that. I constantly find myself in the privileged position of being on stages where I'm taking other people on a journey to enter into their own spiritual journey. I mean, I'm just the instrument there, I'm literally the instrument, not just with an instrument. Here's a few notes for you. I'm going to play the harp, but I don't know where your journey is going to go. But it's such a privilege to be there. such a privilege, and that is life-giving for me. It's really life-giving. Makes my eyes sparkle.